Over the last few weeks and slash months, I've been going through old portfolios and showing you different collections of artwork, some just general art, some specialist, the Cool Faith Fairies or the fashion portfolios, etc. And this is another one. This one is artwork based on one of my books that I've been working on for a few years. I started it maybe 4 years ago, and one of the ways in which I work, I need to visualize people. I either make pinboards on Pinterest or I draw the pictures of them. And so this week I want to tell you about Lauren and the other characters in this book and show you some pictures and some artwork, and then tell you also about some ways in which I write and how I make these characters come alive. First off, let me introduce the characters of the book that I've been working on. Some of the drawings in this just don't resemble what I have in my mind, and so that is very definitely not Lauren. I'm not showing you in great detail because that is Lauren. This is Lauren Epsom Dollar. Does the name sound familiar in any way? May well do. When Lauren's parents, Shauna and David, first met, they laughed and joked about their surnames making up part of the text graphic that is often inserted into books and websites. It's a kind of pig Latin, means stuff but doesn't quite mean it very well. And it starts off, Lauren Epsom Dollar, sit amit. So when Shauna became pregnant and they started thinking of names, the code name for the baby was Lauren, because it would be Lauren Epsom Dollar. When she was born, the name just was already chosen for them. So who is Lauren? Well, Lauren is a typical 17-year-old, goes to school. She's beautiful, she's popular, she's in with the top crowd, the people that really matter and run the school. She likes languages, she's doing Japanese. She's always been fascinated by Japanese culture and Japan and the languages because of her grandmother, or Sobo, who she's got a lot of her looks and her traits and so forth from. Lauren is also a cheerleader. No surprise there. What's unusual is that Lauren lives in Essex, in southeast England, where there are actually cheerleaders and world championship winning cheerleaders. I kid you not, it is true. There are also some in Finland and Sweden and Slovenia, and Lauren would be one of them. This is Rosie Reynolds, otherwise known as Rancid Rosie. Rosie isn't popular. She has no friends. She's a child of a broken home. Her father ran away. Her mother is an abusive drunk. Rosie has to pretty much fend for herself and spends most of her time alone and in hiding. Lauren and Rosie live next door to each other, but couldn't be more different. Rosie and Lauren used to be friends, haven't been on speaking terms more than a passing dirty remark for a few years. Lauren's problem is she's always playing second chair to Taylor Mack, the cheerleading captain and the queen bee, but doesn't know what she wants to be. Then one day, Rosie and Lauren get a detention that sets them on a path that neither of them thought they would be going down when they started their final year at secondary school. But it is one that may well change their life. They're made to attend St Nick's community project. Their teacher from school, the new Latin and languages teacher, Mr. Charlie Downs, put in a good word and suggestion for them to attend St Nick's. And it turns out he has more of a vested interest in that than it would first seem. Charlie is an interesting and mysterious person, and somebody that Lauren seems to be gravitating towards, wanting to find out more about. He seems to be intrigued by her too. Is it just the looks? Is it that she's good at Japanese? Well, Lauren attends St Nick's and every week is confronted by Magna, the small, feisty boss of the group that she's working with. Magna doesn't like Lauren, and Lauren doesn't like Magna. That is clear. Or is it? Is Magna just trying to push Lauren's buttons for some reason? Maybe. Over the weeks of their attendance, Lauren and Rosie both find new avenues of creativity and ways of discovering who they are and who they could be. So much so, most of the raisers dislike the idea of Lauren's new hobbies and new self-confidence. And Taylor, the queen bee, queen bitch, whatever she is, makes it very clear what role Lauren has to fill. All of these things are delved into and explored and found out in Lauren Epsom Dollar. New book, available, not I'm trying to get it published. I'm trying to get out there and things, and I'm trying to keep it vague so that it doesn't end up spoiling too much. Should you ever get a chance to read it, and hopefully, touch wood, sometime soon, that may well happen. If I can find an agent or a publisher, if this sounds like an interesting book to you in a contemporary teenage YA novel kind of way, then leave comments down below and I will get back to you. But in doing this and making these characters and drawing out these pictures and finding these people and developing them in my head, the characters in this book have grown and developed as I've written. But they started off with a personality and a style and quirks and traits were down on paper before I even wrote the first word of the actual book. How? Why? Well, I'm going to explain. Well, first off, I come up with a concept or an idea. What's the story about? What is it? Who is it? Who are the characters? And sometimes it's just a dream. Sometimes it's a comment from a friend in a pub after a few too many drinks, and you end up thinking, okay, I will run with it. And you end up writing a weird space opera fetish book for a birthday present. Other times it's ideas you've had in your head for years and you develop them, and then it becomes a semi-autobiographical novel telling how you feel and how you end up ostracising friends. Licorice box, baby. Or you end up with a cousin who gets into cheerleading at the age of like 14 and becomes really good at it. So much so that her team become national champions and then go on to be world champions. It really did happen. And it gave me the idea and it fueled the start of this. But then you have to develop characters and you have to come up with people and characters and their names and their personalities and their traits and their quirks and their ideas. So what do? Well, you basically write a CV for each character. And that's what I've done. You write their name, and then you write a description of how they look. Do they have blonde hair, blue eyes? Are they bald? Are they really tall and skinny? Whatever, you write a physical description and get it down. Then, if you're like me, make them into real people. Then, next, you write their likes. You write 6 likes. 6 things that they just love. Then you write 6 things that they don't like. And they can be varied. They can like chocolates but hate oranges. They can like triangles but hate squares. They love the colour green but hate elephants. It doesn't matter. Just random things out of nowhere. Just put them in there, write them down. 6 likes, 6 dislikes. And then you write traits. Personality traits, quirks, ways of doing things. Do they stand too close to you when they talk? Do they have bad breath? Do they pick their fingernails, or do they pick their nose? Do they say a lot, like I do? Do they stutter? All these things, little quirks, add them in, write them down, come up with these ideas. Then forget about it.
Forget about it.
Forget about the likes, the dislikes, the quirks, all of that, and just move on. Then you start to write. And if you're stuck for them doing something, what are they doing? Are they making tea? Are they making their tea really milky with like 6 sugars in it? Because that's how they like their tea. Or are they getting rid of the carrot cake because they really can't stand carrot cake and they're throwing it away? Do they hum as they work? All these little things just go in and just add personality. Then you know they're a little bit weird, a little bit mad, a little bit bonkers. Are they bossy? Are they really opinionated? Do they always want to tell you what they think? Do they hate it when other people interrupt them when they talk? And do they randomly spin on the spot when they think they're in their thing and go, da-da? Who knows? These are the things that are weird character traits, and you see it in your friends. Next time you're out with friends, watch. Know things that they do and work out their quirks. Maybe add one of their quirks into your character's quirks. And then when they see or read their book and go, who pulls at their eyebrows when they're concentrating? Who does this? Random things. And then you start writing. And you start by writing what you know. Isn't that what they'll say? Always write what you know. Whether that's you've got the middle of the book, or you've got the end of the book, but you haven't got the start or the middle. But you've got somewhere to aim to, because you know where it's going. You write out an idea of the book, but you may only know the end. And so you go back to the beginning and you start writing. There is no such thing as writer's block. There's only block on that chapter, or that verse, or that section. If you can't think of what to write, don't write about it. Write about an old wall. Draw a description in words of an old wall that sits at the end of the garden, and then go back and maybe think, There's an old wall in the garden. My character likes kicking a football against it. They've got to work. You've got to start for the next section, a new chapter. That's where they're going to be. It could just be random and you have nothing to do with what your book's about, but it will help you get going again. Also, don't limit yourself to how many words a book has got to be. A novel's got to be 70,000 words. Don't make it 70,000 words exactly, and don't think, I've written 59,000 words, I've got to find another 11,000 words, and then I'm done. It could be halfway through the book, and suddenly you're like, oh, I've got to finish it. If the book's 150,000 words, it's 150,000 words. Write it. Get it all out of your head. Get the entire thing out. Write it. Make it this big, make it an epic. And then, when it's all done and said and written out, then go back to the beginning and start reading it again. And read it all the way through. And try and look at it objectively. And read it and go, I really don't need chapters 5 to 15. There is no point. Get rid of it. You might write chapter 6 and go, this is no point writing chapter 6 because in chapter 15 I explain it in more detail and more, and get rid of it. Or you can go, there's no description in chapter 2 about the situation that they're in. So elaborate on it, add more into it. Concertina, it'll get smaller and bigger and wider and shorter and longer, and you write out stuff. It eventually gets better and it gets more condensed and you realise you don't need it. And then you get into that, you read it through again. That's draft 3. Again, you reduce it down, cut it down, shorten it, whatever. Get rid of stuff. You end up from 150,000 words to 100,000 words until it's a solid block. You can't get rid of anything. You can't put any more into it. It is what it is. And then you get your beta readers to read it. Not one person. You get like 5, 10, 100 if you want. Get them to read through it, tell you what they think. And then if they come back and go, I really can't stand this character, or you don't need chapter 4, go, okay. But don't get rid of it. Don't get rid of chapter 4. Don't get rid of that character. But if 10 people come back to you and go, you really don't need chapter 4, you go, okay, chapter 4 doesn't need to be there. And that character is an arsehole. And he shouldn't be an arsehole. He should be lovely. Okay, he needs to be lovely. Right, you just need to change bits. Then you go back and you start again and you go through. And then at this point, you're at draft 7 or 8 or 15. It's not done till it's that solid block again, where there's no gaps and there's no cracks and there's no problems. And you just keep going over and over and over again. Lauren has taken me 5 years so far to write, I think, 4 years, 5 years. I've started and stopped and gone on and left it and come back to it and then thought about it and then got bored of it and then come back to it again. And each time, the concertina, the accordion sort of, eventually it's crushed down. Now, I think I'm in a solid block and I've got people reading it. Maybe it's solid. We shall see. There are other things you don't do. Don't repeat yourself. And this is one of the things. Don't Brandon Sanderson your words. That'll get some people annoyed. But I've been proven in myself. I've said this to people and people have come back to me and gone, you've ruined all Brandon Sanderson books for me now. Use your words. If she has red hair, she has fiery hair, she has rose gold locks, she has thick trestles of auburn hair, it's scarlet, has flaming hair, she has hair like a pile of autumn leaves scraped together by the gardeners, ready to be burned under the full moon. She doesn't have red hair, hair that's red like paint red hair, hair that's rich red, a very definite red hair that's red, the red hair that is a red hair on her head that is red. Likewise, if he's bald, he's bald. Mention it once and say, he is bald, but don't mention it in every single chapter thereafter. You know, you've mentioned it, you've said it. These are things that irritate me, as you can tell. But do describe them. Don't just go, John lives in a house in Surrey. John liked oranges and he peeled them and left them all over the place. He hated Marmite and kept throwing the Marmite in the office fridge away because it's disgusting. He works in finances, but really wants to be a cellist. He can't play the cello. He's tall and skinny and really weak. There's adding descriptions, but then there are descriptions that are like 15 pages long, and it's like, okay, we get it. He's got a mole on the inside of his left leg. Give the environment space. Give everybody a life, everybody a character, everybody a personality. Now, all of this may be fairly common, and it's kind of like in how to write books like writing suspense and drama into your novel. These things are really good and really helpful. But I've learned another trick, and one trick that has pretty much got my mind working in the last couple of years. A certain K-pop idol Came up with this: when she can't sleep, she reworks old fairy tales. She takes Snow White and modernises it, or rewrites it in her own style, in her head. When she's laying in bed of a night, trying to get asleep, it's not working, she lays there and reimagines Snow White. Or dramatises and writes down the story of her day. Literally just, I got up, I made tea. You go into detail, you tell it as a story. What I've taken to doing is reworking what I've written. If I sit down during the day and write a chapter about Lorem and friends and so forth, of a night time and I'm falling asleep, I think about it and I think about what I've said. Then I can move on to the next bit. As I drift off to sleep, I start to think about the next chapter. Or I sit there and go, you don't need to mention the car's red because you've mentioned that before. You can get rid of that. Or you haven't mentioned this, so I need to go back and add this way back, like 10 chapters before, because that is relevant, because I've written it now out of context. Why has it just suddenly appeared? If I go back 10 chapters and go, oh, I really hate bubbles. No, not bubbles, I hate bubbles. And then when she goes somewhere and there's a phone party, she's like, you know, it has a context, it has history, it has memories. It's not just randomly out of nowhere. So this is how I do it. I write my book and go, don't need that, don't need that. That's not enough description. Describe that, elaborate on that, pull this out, pull it, stretch it, press it, compress it, concertina, all the time. Get it down to a solid block, hand it over to somebody, get them to read it and sit there going, do you like it? Is it any good? Is it crap? Do I throw it away? Is it rubbish? You do that, trust me, you'll do it. Then they give it back to you and you're like, what the have you done to this? And then you hand it off to an agent and go, please publish it. It is very good. It has been gone for a lot of work and it is now this solid block. And they go, we don't do sci-fi. Sci-fi's for weird people. No, it's got to be in Helvetica 12 font with a 1.4 spacing, and it must always have a character called David. And anybody that is alternative or gay must be written out of it, because we don't do that sort of thing. You think I'm kidding? No. That's being mild. That's being nice. Agents are finicky and picky and horrible, and then some of them are lovely and will read your book and go, I didn't like it, but I'll tell you why. I am really passionate about Lorem. I love all of my characters, and I'm hoping that one day you'll be able to read it and maybe fall in love with them too. In the meantime, I'm still trying to approach agents, and so yes, if you are an agent and you have space in your books for a new writer of contemporary novels and sci-fi fantasy, because there's not just one thing, it's multiple genres, multiple ideas, or you're just interested in the cheerleaders of UK and becoming something more of themselves than they started off as, leave me comments down below, talk to me, tell me stuff. And if this was interesting and helpful with the character development stuff, give me a thumbs up. And if you can share this video to somebody, please do. Just send it to them and go, look, I found you a new author. If you're not already and you like these random books and going through artwork and doing flow art paintings and artwork and making models and making patchwork quilts, all of that is covered on London Creative. And if you're not already, then you should be hitting subscribe and come back each week. Do it. You might be the 100th subscriber. You might get a prize. Maybe. Anyway, that's me. That's done. Hope you enjoyed this. And I shall see you again real soon. Bye. Ramble, and half an hour of me rambling on. I wonder what I saw through.